arms are stamped with calluses, and I accept every single one of them. My mother has freckles lined down her arms, and bright red nail polish decorating her fingernails. She uses her right hand to finish up work and send out emails, and her left hand to hold a cup of coffee she drinks throughout the day. My father puts his hands together every night to pray for our family, our friends, and the less fortunate people in the world. But my hands tell a different story. Other than the coarse fingertips I used to press down on the piano keys, my hands are soft and fragile. My nails are weak and always bitten down. And my veins shine through my pale skin after years of suffering from an eating disorder, anorexia. I lost more than 20 kilograms in a year by over-exercising secretly in my bathroom, abusing laxatives, and counting my calories, only to reach one goal: skinny. And when I found myself slipping out of this cycle, I began to cut and hurt myself. When my distorted thoughts took over, I avoided plans that involved food because my head was filled with fear and horror of food and weight gain. To me, food was the enemy, so all of this caution was worth it because I was finally losing the weight that weighed down my self-esteem my whole entire life. As cliché as it sounds, I've always been insecure of the way I looked. Whether genetic or society-stemmed, it's always been a pest that never seemed to go away, no matter how hard I tried. The women I grew up around were very weight-focused and diet-oriented, so there was always a voice now and then telling me to try these diets, get fitter. At 6 years old, I refused to wear a two-piece to the beach. At 9 years old, I declined invitations to pool parties. At 10 years old, I started my first diet, and at 13, the voice in my head was no longer a whisper, but a roar. And there was a part of me that trusted this voice, a part of me that sought comfort and satisfaction in it. August 9th, 2021, the day my hands became the enemy, and the day I pursued a life-threatening decision. I would obey that voice. I would count my calories, I would restrict my food intake, and I would work out as much as I could. I stuck strongly to my decision. I did what the voice told me to do. And a few months later, when I was admitted into therapy, I refused to talk about my eating disorder, and I pivoted the conversation every single session. So I continued to lose weight, although at that point, I had already attempted recovery multiple times. And I know what they say, recovery isn't linear, but my journey seemed like a never-ending spiral. When I found myself slipping out of this restrictive cycle that I created for myself, my hand stabbed me in the back, and I didn't know what to do. Was I supposed to stop them? Was I supposed to tell someone the truth when they looked at me with a worried face and asked me, "Are you okay?" More than a year had passed since I took that decision, and I was still nowhere free from it. It was a slippery slope. I was not content with my eating disorder, but because I did the decision by myself, I would have to dedicate myself to it. So I picked up new habits, worse habits. And in the next 2 months, I lost more weight than I had lost in the past 6 months combined. At this point, I was on medication, I was still going to therapy, and I stopped cutting, but I was still stuck, and things got worse. December 21st, 2022, the day a louder voice took over. It was my therapist. It was a threat. I'd be pulled out of school and admitted to the hospital if I didn't gain weight. When I was first forced into recovery, I found myself in constant pain and agony, unable to escape the whirlpool of thoughts in my mind. For 4 months, I was in partial recovery, so I wasn't gaining enough weight, and I wasn't eating enough. However, as I started to go to therapy more often, I began targeting my anorexia in my sessions, so I began to become more comfortable with the approach I had to take. Recovery was messy, unstable, painful, and filled with agony, and I always thought of relapsing, and many times I felt I was ready to do so. There was always this underlying sense of guilt, of grief, and of shame, as though I had failed at my eating disorder. But as I began to accept and embrace this new me, showing parts of myself not only I enjoyed or was good at, but also devoting myself to helping people with anorexia, I began to realize that my value to the world doesn't come from my perfectionism and pain. That this pursuit of skinny that I created for myself wasn't realistic, and that I didn't have to be the prettiest or the skinniest in my friend group to be influential and contribute to the world, and that I didn't have to be a slave to the number on the scale. And thanks to my therapist, my psychiatrist, my family, and my friends, I was able to accept my scars and start over. My scars are no longer shameful, but a reminder of my struggles, my strengths, and a promise of who I was going to be. Thank you.